How are you doing, you wonderful nerd? As of this recording, Marvel Studios has privately screened some footage from Avengers Infinity War at D23. The internet hasn't broken just yet, as this footage hasn't been publicly released, but it is safe to say that the cracks are showing with the excitement of Marvel fans everywhere, especially when it comes to the big bad villain they've been setting up ever since the first Avengers film, the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. It's no secret that one of the MCU's biggest weaknesses has been their lack of interesting villains. Some of them have been fantastic: Loki, Vulture, Ego, and the Netflix antagonists like Fisk and Kilgrave. But for every one of those, we get a Yellow Jacket, Malekith, Ronin, Mads Mikkelsen, and, Boy, I honestly forgot who the villain in Iron Fist was. Was it himself? All along? Was that the hidden meaning? Yeah, there's no way to know for sure. I'm not saying all of these villains are bad, per se, just that they aren't incredibly interesting. A lot of them simply feel like bad guys who are only evil because that's what the script says they are. And it's hard to overstate just how important the villains are to a story, especially for sequels and ongoing stories where we've already seen the heroes in action. So if we are finally gonna get to see Thanos after all of these years, here are a few ways I think Marvel could make the big bad of their cinematic universe stand out. As Stan Lee said, quote, "The most important thing in any hero versus villain story is that the villain always has to seem more powerful than the hero. The reader has to look at the story or the movie and they have to say, how is Spider-Man gonna get out of this? How is he ever gonna beat someone with that power?" End quote. So when you have a massive lineup of heroes ready to take down one purple alien, you need to somehow make it seem not only plausible that the villain could win, but certain that the heroes will lose. That's what makes their triumph so rewarding in the end, even though we know on some level that victory for the hero is inevitable. So far in Marvel movies, when we have a big team of heroes, we also have a big army of faceless, nameless baddies. The Chitauri in Avengers, the robots in Age of Ultron, Ronin's goons in Guardians, etc. Essentially, every time there are two or more heroes teaming up, audiences are treated to a final battle involving a horde of overwhelming yet fragile enemies. Again, it's about showing an impossible victory by having an already large number of heroes outnumbered even still. Along these same lines, we know that Thanos is not the only antagonist of Infinity War. There's the Black Order, or so-called Children of Thanos, who are revealed at D23. What's great about these characters is that they aren't an army of infinitely duplicated fodder, but a small group of bad guys with actual names and distinguishing features. Still speculation, of course, but it looks like Cull Obsidian as a brute tank, Proxima Midnight as an agile warrior, Corvus Glaive as a brilliant tactician, and Ebony Maw as a manipulative wild card. Wild card, bitches! Yeah! I imagine these characters will serve a couple purposes in Infinity War. Since the Infinity Stones are scattered all over the place right now, I believe Thanos could send them out to gather the gems for the Infinity Gauntlet. But I believe the main use of the Children of Thanos would be to split the heroes up into interesting groups of characters who perhaps haven't had the chance to interact just yet. Mixing fun heroes together like Doctor Strange and Ant-Man would be interesting, Spider-Man and Hulk, that'd be a ton of fun, but honestly, all I want to see is how Falcon reacts to Rocket. It's a very similar thing that a Marvel comic crossover event from a few years ago did. Original Sin was a pretty okay story, but the main draw for me was how the plot brought together characters who didn't seem to belong together at all, but ended up working surprisingly well for specific tasks. There's a wealth of fascinating characters in the MCU that will all be getting together for Infinity War. Previous movies have shown that some of the best moments come from characters clashing, or unexpectedly getting along.
He's a friend from work.
The Children of Thanos could be used for exactly that purpose. Some reports of the footage shown at D23 talk about how it looked like there were shots of several different battlefields. Separating the large roster of superheroes into more manageable, diverse groups to take out specific mini-bosses would help our protagonists get acquainted with one another, as well as make the antagonists a little more memorable. Of course, the Black Order will very likely get defeated, and our team of heroes will come together to attack Thanos by himself. So, we are back at our initial question. How do you make one Lavender Lowlife seem more powerful than nearly every hero Marvel has put on screen combined? Well, for starters, you give him a gauntlet that can literally bend space, time, and the fabric of reality. It's That's a pretty good start. But even with the Infinity Gauntlet fully bedazzled with the 6 colorful Infinity Stones, that only takes the audience so far. I mean, sure, we can be told that Thanos is an all-powerful being, but most of the stones represent fairly abstract concepts like time, souls, and minds. Since film is a visual medium, Marvel needs to show us the power of Thanos in a way that makes every other villain in their universe seem like a practice round. He throws a planet? Hell yeah! Okay, so what I can gather from the reports of the D23 footage, Thanos crushes and throws a planet, or a moon. It's kind of unclear and caused a bit of a stir on my Twitter feed. Either way, that's a hell of a way to get the point across. Loki tried to rule a planet, but couldn't get past New York. Ronan tried to destroy a planet, but got distracted by dancing. Ego was a planet, and arguably the most powerful antagonist the MCU has seen thus far, but ultimately had a weakness to large explosions, just like the rest of us. Reportedly, using celestial bodies as projectiles doesn't even make Thanos break into a sweat, which I only imagine is like those neon Gatorade commercials back in the day. But that's the power of the Infinity Gauntlet. He throws a planet and says, "What's next?" Sure, he's also a physically imposing muscular boy, but the hero roster involves the likes of Hulk, Groot, and a giant Paul Rudd man, so I guess Marvel could just make Thanos even bigger, but, at that point you just have a giant purple planet destroyer. You might as well have Galactus. Wait, you don't think that Marvel is trying to... Never mind. Anyway, the Mad Titan's whole quest is to court death, which in the Marvel Universe is an actual being Thanos is in love with. He wants to impress her with his power, so beating the universe's most capable heroes by simply outnumbering them until they are tired and die isn't super impressive. Thanos himself needs to be in the thick of it. He needs to take on all of Marvel's heroes face to faces. The Avengers and Guardians need to unleash everything they have only for Thanos to brush it off. This would force the heroes to outsmart him instead of outpunch him. If I had to speculate, as if I weren't doing that already, this is where Captain America comes into play. Steve Rogers shows back up to help the team defeat Thanos, but he's no longer the Sentinel of Liberty, he's just Steve. He could take on the role of chief strategist, working behind the scenes and conducting the fight like a symphony of superheroes, much like he did in the JLA Avengers crossover comic from the early 2000s. Of course, at some point he'll have to enact that classic scene from the Infinity Gauntlet comics of him confronting the Violet villain and having his shield shattered. I love it so much, and that's what I'm talking about. Thanos getting off of his throne, fighting his own battles to impress death. Of course, what better way to court death than to actually kill some heroes permanently? Coincidentally, the TV tropes page for the hero killer trope, a typically omnipotent character who exists only to ruthlessly hunt down and murder heroes, displays the image of Thanos as the definitive example. To further the Mad Titan as a formidable foe, he can't just defeat our heroes, he has to kill one or perhaps a few of them, especially the lovable ones. It's a simple way to make the audience hate the villain, add weight to the story, and rally the troops to eventually work together and win the day. Marvel movies have attempted to kill off characters for this effect, but it's usually done as a fake out or the character seems to come back in one way or another. Coulson, Groot, Fury, Bucky, Loki, Rhodey, etc. Infinity War needs to kill off at least one major Marvel character. Avengers Infinity War will be released 10 years after the Iron Man that started it all back in 2008. 1 decade since the MCU kicked off, and nearly every hero has managed to dodge the bullet. Sorry, Quicksilver.
You didn't see that coming.
The most obvious choice to bite the bullet is the shellhead himself, Iron Man, the hero who started us down this road exactly 10 years ago by the time Infinity War hits theaters. What better hero to kill to display Thanos as the threat he truly is? This is Phase 3. This is when everything comes together. They shouldn't be able to face Thanos and the unlimited power of the Infinity Gauntlet beat him and then business as usual. The Marvel Cinematic Universe can never and should never be the same. That's what would make Thanos Marvel's best movie adversary. If he could fight our heroes without a faceless army, but instead a small group of distinct mini-bosses that separate the good guys into interesting squads of characters with fun and memorable interactions. But ultimately, we need to see Thanos take on everyone, and I mean everyone, by himself and court death by killing one or two notable characters and having them stay dead for good. But hey, that's just my opinion. I would love to know what you guys think down in the comments. How do you think Infinity War will use Thanos and the Black Order? Remember that this video was released before any footage was publicly available, so there's a great chance that I'm outright wrong about everything. Still, it's fun to speculate. As always, I'm going to give a huge shout out to our patrons who make these videos possible, especially Christopher Lang, Patrick Cattery, Austin Rogers, Mike Harville, Kendra, Elizabeth Monsell, and the rest of the wonderful nerds who support us over on patreon.com/NerdSync. If this is your first time hanging out with us here at NerdSync, make sure you check out some of these other videos that YouTube thinks you will like. We'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, I've been Scott, reminding you to read between the panels and grow smarter through comics. See ya.